It is 0 hour 30 Universal Time. I'm Jim Tedder in Washington. United Nations Secretary-General Kofi Annan has urged Israel to end its air, land, and sea blockade of Lebanon. He spoke in southern Lebanon. Israel says it will not end its blockade until UN peacekeepers are deployed on Lebanon's border. Israel wants the UN forces to stop arms shipments to Hezbollah guerrillas. Earlier in Jerusalem, Mr. Annan held talks with Israeli Defense Minister Amir Peretz. After the talks, the UN chief said Israel is responsible for most of the violations of the 2-week-old ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. Mr. Annan says the UN hopes to deploy 2,500 more troops to southern Lebanon by Friday. The same number of peacekeepers are already there. Palestinian reports say Israeli forces have killed 5 Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The report said Israeli troops killed 3 Palestinians near Gaza City. They said one of the dead belonged to the Islamic group Hamas. Earlier Tuesday, Israeli troops killed 2 Palestinians in clashes near the West Bank town of Nablus. The dead were said to be members of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades. Iraqi officials say the army has regained control of the southern city of Diwaniyah. The announcement came after fierce clashes between government soldiers and fighters loyal to Shiite Muslim clergyman Muqtada al-Sadr. The office of Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki said 50 of the fighters and 23 soldiers were killed in the fighting Monday. Several civilians also were reported killed. The fighting ended after the government reached an agreement with the fighters. In other news, the United States military reports that 11 American troops have been killed in fighting in Iraq since Sunday. The president of Iran says no one can prevent his country from having a peaceful nuclear program. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad spoke in Tehran. He also said it is unlikely that the United Nations Security Council will act against Iran. The Council called on Iran to stop processing the element uranium by this Thursday, or face possible punishment. The Iranian leader also proposed a live debate with President Bush on international issues. In Washington, the Bush administration said the proposal is an attempt to prevent discussions of the Iranian nuclear program. Sudan has repeated its opposition to replacing the African Union force in Darfur with United Nations peacekeepers. A Sudanese government spokesman says his country's position was stated in a meeting Tuesday. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir met in Khartoum with the American Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. Jindai Frazier passed on a message from President Bush about deploying a UN force in Darfur. Mr. al-Bashir reportedly said he would send a diplomat to Washington to discuss the issue. The United States and Britain have called for a vote on a proposed UN resolution to permit the world group to prepare peacekeepers for deployment in Darfur. You are listening to the news in VOA Special English. Police in Britain have charged 3 more suspects with plotting to murder airplane passengers by exploding planes flying to the United States. The 3 suspects are Mohammed Yasser Gulzar, Nabil Hussein, and Mohammed Shamin Uddin. They will appear before a judge in a court in London on Wednesday. 15 suspects so far have been charged in the plane explosion plot. 5 other suspects are still being held. 5 have been released. Pakistan is also holding several suspects in the terror plot. Police in Britain and Pakistan have been observing the suspects for months. Officials arrested the suspects more than 2 weeks ago. A Russian lawmaker says he cannot dismiss the possibility that Russian soldiers are to blame for a deadly battle at a school in Beslan. More than 300 people were killed in the battle 2 years ago between Russian troops and Chechen militants. The militants were holding more than 1,000 hostages. Russian officials say the militants caused a series of explosions that forced troops to raid the school building. But lawmaker Yuri Savolyov said small military bombs exploding may have caused the larger explosions that led to the raid. Mr. Savolyov is said to be an expert in explosions and fire. President Bush has visited the American city of New Orleans, Louisiana, to mark the first anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Mr. Bush said New Orleans wants her people to return. The President praised the people of New Orleans for bravery during the crisis and the current recovery period. New Orleans is holding a traditional jazz funeral march through the streets. Jazz music was created in that southern city. The population of New Orleans is now about 200,000. That is about half what it was before Hurricane Katrina. Some homes are still wrecked, and some areas still lack water and electricity. Critics blame the Bush administration for the slow rate of recovery from the storm last year. American weather experts continue to warn that a powerful storm may land on the east coast of the state of Florida, but they say Tropical Storm Ernesto is not expected to strengthen into a hurricane. The storm landed on South Florida on Tuesday. Heavy rain fell in Miami and other areas. Weather officials say violent windstorms are possible over the Florida Keys. Officials say the tropical storm may become a hurricane as it reaches the Atlantic Ocean and lands in either Georgia or South Carolina. And now, briefly, here again is the major news of the hour. UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan has urged Israel to end its air, land, and sea blockade of Lebanon. He spoke in southern Lebanon. Iraqi officials say the army has regained control of the southern city of Diwaniyah. And the president of Iran says no one can prevent his country from having a peaceful nuclear program. And that's the news in VOA Special English. This is Jim Tedder reporting.